Ida for divorcing my wife and telling everyone that she cheated on me. I'm 28 years old, and for the last 6 years, my life has been intertwined with someone I thought was my soulmate. My wife, or at least, the woman who has worn that title for the past 2 years, is 29. We've shared everything together, from dreams to heartbreaks, from laughter to tears. Every significant moment of my adult life has somehow included her. Our story wasn't the kind you'd find in romance novels. It wasn't all fireworks and grand gestures. It was built on quiet moments of understanding, long conversations that stretched into the early hours, and a mutual promise that no matter what life threw at us, we'd face it together. I never thought I'd be standing here now, grappling with the decision to end it all. Ending a marriage is never easy. It's not something you decide on a whim or after a minor argument. It's a decision born from deep pain, the kind that keeps you awake at night and makes you question everything you thought you knew about love and loyalty. And yet, here I am, not because I stopped loving her, but because she betrayed me in a way I never saw coming. It's strange, isn't it? You can spend years with someone, share your deepest thoughts, your insecurities, your dreams, and still not know everything about them. I thought I knew her. I thought I could read her every expression, understand the meaning behind every word. And yet, I was blindsided. To be clear, I never doubted her loyalty. There were no red flags in our relationship, no signs that anything was amiss. She didn't come home late smelling of unfamiliar perfume. Her phone wasn't locked or hidden away from me. She never acted distant or distracted. Our life together felt normal. Happy, even. Sure, like any couple, we had our disagreements. There were times we annoyed each other, times we got under each other's skin. But in the end, we always came back to the same understanding: we were in this together. We made vows, after all. And I took those vows seriously. Maybe that's why the betrayal cut so deep. When you trust someone implicitly, when you let down your walls and give them your heart, you expect them to treat it with care. You expect them to value what you've built together. But that trust can be shattered in an instant. It doesn't take grand acts of infidelity to break a heart. Sometimes, it's the small betrayals, the ones you never see coming, that leave the deepest scars. For me, that betrayal came in the form of a photograph. It was an ordinary day when my phone buzzed with a message from someone I barely knew. One of my wife's friends. Let's call her Emma. I remember pausing, confused as to why she would be messaging me. We weren't close. In fact, we'd barely exchanged more than a few polite words at gatherings. But curiosity got the better of me, and I opened the message. What I saw made my heart stop. The photo wasn't explicit. It wasn't the kind of thing you'd expect in a scandalous tabloid story. It was simply a snapshot of my wife at a party, dancing. Her arms were wrapped around another man, their bodies pressed close. And then there was the kiss, a kiss that left no room for misinterpretation. I stared at that photo for what felt like an eternity. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. Was it real? Was it recent? Was it a joke? But no amount of rationalization could change what I saw. My wife, the woman I trusted with my heart, was kissing someone else. I felt a wave of emotions crash over me. Confusion, anger, sadness, but above all, a deep, aching hurt. I couldn't believe it. This wasn't her. This wasn't the woman I married. There had to be an explanation, I told myself. Maybe it was an old photo. Maybe it was taken out of context. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't as bad as it seemed. But the pit in my stomach told me otherwise. Still, I needed to know the truth. I needed to hear it from her. But how do you ask the person you love if they've betrayed you? How do you look them in the eye and say, "Did you kiss someone else? Did you break our vows? Did you throw away everything we've built for a moment of drunken stupidity?" I decided to wait until she got home. The hours dragged on, each minute feeling like an eternity. My mind replayed every moment of our relationship, searching for signs I might have missed. Did she seem distant lately? Did she laugh a little too hard at someone else's joke? Did she spend too long on her phone? But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't find a single instance that pointed to this. When she finally walked through the door, I felt my heart tighten. She looked the same as always, beautiful, radiant, the woman I loved. But now, there was a shadow hanging over her, a question I couldn't ignore. I didn't waste time with small talk. "Have you ever cheated on me?" I asked, my voice steady, but my hands trembling. Her eyes widened in surprise. "What? No, of course not." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that the photo was a mistake, that I was overreacting. But the image was burned into my mind. I couldn't unsee it. "Then explain this," I said, pulling out my phone and showing her the photo. The color drained from her face. She didn't deny it. She didn't try to come up with an excuse. Instead, tears welled up in her eyes, and she began to cry. "It was a mistake," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It was the only mistake I've ever made. I was drunk. I didn't know what I was doing." Drunk? That was her explanation. I wanted to scream. To shout. To ask her how she could do this to me. But instead, I stood there in silence, my heart breaking with every tear that fell from her eyes. She reached out to touch my hand, but I pulled away. "I thought you loved me," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I do love you," she cried. It meant nothing. It was a stupid, drunken mistake. Please, don't throw everything away over this. But how could I not? Love is built on trust. And once that trust is broken, it's almost impossible to get it back. She might have seen it as a small mistake, a moment of poor judgment. But to me, it was a betrayal of everything we stood for. And I wasn't sure I could ever forgive her. It was a quiet Wednesday evening when my phone buzzed. The notification was from a social media platform, and at first glance, I didn't think much of it. People sent messages now and then, former classmates, old friends, even distant acquaintances who found my profile. But this message was different. It wasn't from someone I knew well. The sender's name barely registered. She was a friend of my wife, someone I'd seen at a few gatherings but never spoken to directly. We'd exchanged polite nods and the occasional hello, but nothing more. That's why her message instantly piqued my curiosity. There was no small talk. No friendly preamble. Instead, her message was blunt and to the point. "You need to know something about your wife." I stared at the screen, my heart beginning to race. Messages like that never bring good news. My palms grew clammy as I tapped to open the chat fully, revealing a photo attachment. The image loaded slowly, as if the universe itself wanted to prolong my agony. And then, there it was. A photo of my wife. She was at a club, surrounded by flashing lights and a crowd of people. Her arms were draped around a man I didn't recognize. Their bodies were pressed close, swaying to the music. But it wasn't the dancing that caught my attention. It was the kiss. Their lips were locked, and there was no mistaking the intimacy in that moment. It wasn't a friendly peck on the cheek or a playful gesture. It was passionate, deliberate. It was the kind of kiss you don't share with someone unless you feel something or unless alcohol lowers your inhibitions to the point that you forget who you are. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the image. My mind reeled, trying to make sense of it. Was this really my wife? My hands shook as I read the follow-up message from her friend. "She told me it was a mistake, but I thought you deserved to know. She was very drunk, and it only happened that one time. I promise you, she's not the kind of person who cheats around. But you should have the full picture." The full picture. The irony wasn't lost on me. The full picture was staring me in the face, captured in a single, damning snapshot. I sat there for what felt like hours, my mind racing. How long had this been going on? Was this a one-time thing, or was it part of a larger pattern? Did she have feelings for that man, or was it just a moment of weakness? I knew I couldn't let the questions fester. I needed answers, and I needed them now. Can you forward the photo to me? I typed back, my fingers trembling. Within moments, the photo was saved to my phone, a permanent reminder of the crack that had just formed in the foundation of my marriage. I thanked her friend for telling me and put the phone down, staring into the distance. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Shock. Confusion. Hurt. Anger. I could feel the blood pounding in my ears, my chest tight with the weight of betrayal. I tried to think back to the times my wife had gone out with her friends. Had there been any signs? Any moments when she'd acted differently? But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't find any glaring red flags. She had never given me a reason to doubt her. She never hid her phone or acted suspiciously. There were no late-night texts or sudden changes in behavior. So why? Why would she do this? I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I needed to confront her. The door creaked open, and she walked in, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. She greeted me with a soft smile, the same smile that had once made my heart skip a beat. But now, it only made me feel hollow. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice steady, but my heart pounding. She paused, sensing something was off. "Of course," she said cautiously. "What's wrong?" I took a deep breath, my gaze unwavering. "Have you ever cheated on me?" The question hung in the air like a dark cloud. Her eyes widened, shock and confusion flashing across her face. "What? No. Why would you even ask that?" I pulled out my phone and opened the photo, holding it up for her to see. Her expression shifted instantly. The color drained from her cheeks, and her lips parted slightly in shock. She didn't deny it. She didn't try to brush it off. Instead, tears welled up in her eyes, and she began to shake her head. I can explain," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Explain what?" I asked, my voice cold. "Explain why my wife is kissing another man." "It wasn't what it looks like," she said quickly, her words tumbling out in a frantic rush. "I was drunk. So drunk I could barely walk. I don't even remember half of that night. I swear to you, it was a mistake. It meant nothing." Her tears started to fall, streaking her cheeks. She looked desperate, broken. But I couldn't bring myself to feel sympathy. "Not yet." "You don't remember?" I repeated, my tone skeptical. "So you don't even know who he is?" She shook her head. "No. I mean, I think he was a friend of a friend. But I didn't. It wasn't planned. It just happened." I folded my arms, my jaw tightening. "Did you kiss him more than once?" "No," she said firmly. "It was just that one time. I swear to you, it's never happened before. I've never cheated on you. I've never slept with anyone else. This was a mistake. A stupid, drunken mistake." Her words hung in the air, but they did little to soothe the ache in my chest. "A mistake," I echoed bitterly. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I didn't tell you because I knew you'd be angry," she sobbed. I thought it would just hurt you more. I didn't want to ruin what we have." Her words cut deep. "You didn't want to ruin what we have," I repeated, my voice rising. "Well, guess what? You did. You ruined it the moment you kissed him." She broke down completely, collapsing onto the couch as sobs racked her body. But I didn't move to comfort her. I couldn't. The image of that kiss was seared into my mind, a constant reminder of her betrayal. In that moment, I realized something painful. I still loved her. I loved her with every fiber of my being. And that was what made it hurt so much. I love you, she whispered through her tears. Please, don't leave me. Don't throw everything away over one mistake. But love wasn't enough. Not anymore. Because trust, once broken, is almost impossible to repair. And no matter how much I loved her, I couldn't erase the image from my mind. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, I said quietly. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. Please, don't give up on us. We've been together for 6 years. We've been through so much. Are you really going to throw it all away because of one kiss? I took a step back, the distance between us growing. I need time to think, I said, my voice hollow. And with that, I walked out the door, leaving behind the woman I once thought I'd spend forever with. The silence between us felt like a chasm, widening with each passing second. Her sobs had slowed, and her words hung in the air like an unanswered plea. Would you really throw away 6 years over a kiss? She asked again, her voice barely a whisper. I stared at her, my mind replaying the moment over and over, the photo, the betrayal, her tearful confession. 6 years. It sounded like a long time when you said it out loud, but in that moment, it felt like nothing compared to the weight of what she'd done. Of course I would, I said coldly. Wouldn't you? Her breath hitched, and she shook her head in disbelief, tears still streaming down her face. No. I wouldn't. I wouldn't throw everything away over one mistake. I'd fight for us. Her words made my chest tighten, but I forced myself to remain stoic. You already threw it away the moment you kissed someone else, I said, each word cutting like a knife. You made that decision, not me. I turned toward the door, my mind made up. There was no point in dragging this out. She had betrayed me, and there was no going back from that. As I reached for the door handle, I heard her footsteps behind me, frantic and desperate. Please, don't go, she begged, grabbing my arm. Her grip was firm, but her hands trembled. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can figure it out. Don't throw everything away. I pulled my arm away, my voice firm. It's too late. She stood frozen in place, her eyes wide and filled with disbelief. Too late, she repeated, as if she couldn't comprehend my words. For one kiss? You're really divorcing me over one stupid kiss? Yes, I said, without hesitation. Because that kiss wasn't just a kiss. It was a betrayal. It shattered everything I believed about us. I opened the door, stepping out into the cool night air. She followed me to the threshold, her voice growing louder, more desperate. I was drunk. She cried out. I wasn't thinking clearly. It meant nothing. I turned back one last time, my eyes locking onto hers. It meant enough to break us. And with that, I walked away. I barely remember the drive home. The streets blurred together, the streetlights casting long shadows across the pavement. My mind was a storm of emotions: anger, sadness, confusion. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to forget everything I'd just seen and heard. But the moment I stepped inside my apartment, the reality of it all hit me like a tidal wave. The emptiness of the room, the silence that pressed in from all sides, it was suffocating. I sat down on the couch, staring at my phone. It was already lighting up with missed calls and texts. Her name appeared on the screen over and over again. Lily. I ignored every call, every message. But they didn't stop. Soon, her number was joined by others. My parents. Her parents. Mutual friends. They all wanted to know what had happened. They all wanted to talk. But I couldn't bring myself to answer. Instead, I did the only thing that made sense at the time. I grabbed the nearest bottle of whiskey, poured myself a glass, and downed it in one gulp. The burn in my throat was a welcome distraction from the ache in my chest. The texts kept coming. Mom, what happened? Lily's parents called us. Call me. Dad, pick up the phone. Unknown number, you're a fucking asshole for doing this to her. She's devastated. I didn't even know who that last message was from. One of her friends, probably. But I didn't care. I poured another drink. And another. Before I knew it, the bottle was half empty, and my mind was foggy. The pain was still there, but it was dulled, distant. I welcomed the numbness. But it wasn't enough. I needed to get out of that apartment. I needed noise, people, distractions. Anything to drown out the thoughts swirling in my head. So, I grabbed my coat and headed out. The first club I went to was loud and crowded, just the way I needed it to be. The music pounded in my ears, drowning out everything else. People danced, laughed, drank. They were carefree, lost in the moment. I envied them. I found my way to the bar and ordered another drink. And another. The bartender gave me a curious look, probably wondering why I was drinking so much so fast. But he didn't say anything. He just kept pouring. I lost track of time. The hours blurred together. I drank, I danced with strangers, I tried to forget. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the image from my mind, that photo of Lily with another man. The kiss. Her tearful confession. Her desperate pleas for me to stay. I wanted to forget. I needed to forget. The nights blurred into a pattern. Club after club. Drink after drink. I threw myself into the nightlife, hoping to drown my pain in alcohol and fleeting encounters. But no matter how many drinks I had or how many people I danced with, the ache in my chest never fully went away. And the calls didn't stop. One night, after stumbling back to my apartment in the early hours of the morning, I checked my phone. There were dozens of missed calls and texts, but one stood out. It was from Lily. I still love you. Please don't shut me out. I stared at the message for a long time, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Part of me wanted to respond. Part of me wanted to call her and tell her that I missed her too, that I still loved her despite everything. But the pain was still too fresh. The betrayal too raw. Instead, I deleted the message and threw my phone across the room. A week passed. Then two. The clubs became my sanctuary, the place where I could lose myself in the noise and the chaos. But no matter how hard I tried to escape, the reality of my situation always found its way back in. One night, after drinking more than I should have, I found myself sitting at the bar, staring into my empty glass. Rough night, the bartender asked, breaking me out of my thoughts. I laughed bitterly. Something like that. He nodded knowingly. Hard break. I didn't answer, but my silence was enough. Yet, he said, pouring me another drink. I've seen it before. People come in here trying to forget. But it never works. I stared at the drink, his words echoing in my mind. It never works. Maybe he was right. Maybe no amount of alcohol or distractions could erase the pain of betrayal. But I wasn't ready to face it yet. So, I downed the drink and signaled for another. Because for now, the numbness was better than the alternative. The calls, texts, and messages didn't stop. At first, I ignored them, hoping the storm would pass. But it didn't. Instead, it grew worse. My phone buzzed constantly with incoming notifications from our friends, from our families, from people I barely knew. It wasn't just my wife reaching out anymore. Her mother called me 6 times in one night, leaving increasingly frantic voicemails. Her father, who had always been reserved and polite toward me, sent a text that was uncharacteristically blunt. You need to talk to Lily. You owe her that much. I didn't respond. My own family got involved too. My mother was concerned. confused by the sudden chaos in my life. "Why won't you talk to her?" she asked over the phone one evening. "6 years together, and you're going to throw it all away without even trying to work it out." "There's nothing to work out," I said, my voice cold. "She kissed someone else. That's not something you just work out." "But it was a mistake," my mother argued. "People make mistakes. You're not perfect either." Her words stung, but I held my ground. A mistake like that destroys trust. Without trust, there's no relationship. Still, the pressure didn't let up. Every day felt like a new assault, a barrage of guilt, judgment, and unsolicited advice from people who weren't living my life, who weren't carrying my pain. And eventually, I reached my breaking point. It happened on a Saturday night. I'd just returned from yet another aimless night out, and as I collapsed onto the couch, my phone buzzed once again. It was a message from one of Lily's cousins, someone I'd never even met in person. "You're a piece of shit for what you're doing to her. She made one mistake, and you're ruining her life. Grow up." I stared at the message, my hands trembling with a mix of anger and frustration. How did I become the villain in this story? How did I become the one being judged? I couldn't take it anymore. I opened my phone, pulled up the group chat that included both our families and mutual friends, and began typing. The message I sent was longer than anything I'd ever written. I poured my heart into it, explaining everything from the beginning. I described how I found out about the kiss, how I confronted Lily, how she admitted it was a mistake. I told them how hurt I was, how betrayed I felt. I didn't hold back. And at the end of the message, I attached the photo. The photo that started it all. I hit send and put my phone down, my heart pounding in my chest. It didn't take long for the responses to come flooding in. My phone buzzed relentlessly as people reacted to the message. Some were shocked. Some were sympathetic. Others were angry, not at Lily, but at me. "You shouldn't have shared that. That was private. You're humiliating her." But I stood by my decision. For days, I ignored the fallout. I let people say what they wanted to say. I didn't care anymore. I was done trying to justify myself. And then, one afternoon, a text came in that made my heart sink. It was from Lily. "Lily? Why? Why did you do this? Why did you tell everyone?" I stared at the message, feeling a strange mix of guilt and anger. I hadn't heard from her in days. Her silence had been deafening. And now, here she was, reaching out not to apologize again, not to try to fix things, but to confront me about airing our dirty laundry. I didn't know how to respond. Before I could think of a reply, another message came through. "Lily? I was already hurting. I already lost you. And now, because of you, I've lost my family too. My parents are furious with me. Some of my relatives won't even speak to me anymore. Do you know how that feels?" I did know. I knew exactly how it felt to lose people you cared about. To feel isolated and judged. But instead of feeling satisfaction, I felt empty. Was this what I wanted? I didn't reply to her messages right away. Instead, I sat with my thoughts, replaying everything that had happened in the past few weeks. Had I gone too far? Was I wrong to tell everyone? Part of me wanted to believe that I had every right to do what I did. I was the victim. I was the one who'd been hurt, betrayed. Why should I suffer in silence while she got to move on with her life as if nothing happened? But another part of me, a quieter, more rational part, whispered that maybe I had crossed a line. Maybe this was something that should have stayed between us. Maybe I'd acted out of anger, out of a need for revenge, rather than a desire for closure. The days turned into weeks, and slowly, the chaos began to die down. People stopped calling, stopped texting. Life moved on. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was stuck. One evening, I sat alone in my apartment, scrolling through old photos on my phone. There were so many pictures of us smiling, happy, in love. I paused on one photo in particular. It was from our wedding day. Lily was laughing, her eyes bright with joy. I remembered that moment vividly. I remembered the promises we made to each other. For better or worse. In sickness and in health. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of those words. Eventually, I did reply to her. It wasn't a long message. It wasn't an apology. It was just the truth. I told everyone because I was hurting. I wanted them to understand why I couldn't stay. But maybe I should have handled it differently. I don't know. All I know is that I couldn't keep it inside. Her response came quickly. Lily, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I hurt you. I know I broke your trust. But I never thought you would hurt me like this. I never thought you would turn everyone against me. I didn't know what to say to that. Because, in a way, she was right. I had hurt her. I had turned our private pain into a public scandal. And now, we were both left picking up the pieces of a broken life. Weeks later, as I stood in front of my lawyer's office, signing the final divorce papers, I felt a strange sense of closure. But it wasn't the kind of closure I'd hoped for. There was no satisfaction. No victory. Just an overwhelming sense of loss. Looking back, I still don't know if I did the right thing. Was I justified in telling everyone what happened? Or should I have kept it between us? Some days, I feel certain that I did what I had to do. I couldn't bear the weight of that betrayal alone. I needed people to know the truth. But other days, I wonder if I let my anger get the better of me. Maybe I did go too far. Maybe I became the villain in my own story. And maybe, just maybe, there are no winners in a situation like this, only broken hearts and shattered trust.